welcome. You're listening to The Real Truth About You. This is a show where we try to help you to become the best that you can be by helping you discover the real you and then living through that. My name is Will Sinclair, and I'll be your host for today. There's a couple of things I want to talk to you about. One of them is about discovering your fear and working through that fear. The other thing is a thing I read with Dr. Wayne Dyre in his book, Wishes Fulfilled. And anyway, I want to talk to you a little bit about fear. And fear is something that can cripple you and stop you from moving ahead. And I have to be honest with you that even doing this podcast, this show, The Real Truth About You, which, by the way, you can get more shows at therealtruthaboutyou.com. But one thing about doing this show is I actually have a fear of talking, especially on like this kind of radio type broadcast. And the reason is I sometimes my brain just seems to I have this thing called delayed reaction or delayed intelligence, it's called. And it's, you know how you say, you're going to say something, you can't seem to remember what to say. And then maybe 2 hours later you think, oh, I should have said that. Or you get into a conversation with somebody, or somebody says something to you that you kind of get into a little, I don't know, argument maybe, and 2 hours later you think, I should have said that. Well, I call that delayed intelligence. But sometimes I feel when I'm talking that I'm going to turn on this microphone and then I'm going to sit there like a writer before a blank page and go, I don't know what to say today, and then say a whole bunch of stuff that doesn't mean anything. So one of my ways of conquering this fear is to hit the record button and just do it. Just sit down, just do it, see what happens. I'm talking to you personally. Do you have a fear that's stopping you? And one of the things I've decided to do in my life, and I'm not saying I'm perfect at doing this. I'm not saying I'm perfect at everything I believe in and teach in, but I do try to do what I know to be true. And one of the things is about conquering fear. And some fears take a lot longer to conquer because they're bigger fears. But there's a lot of fears you can start with that are really small. And for me, this is one of them, just talking in front of people. And I mean, some people fear public speaking more than death. And I might be close to that, but I have gone out and I have done quite a bit of public speaking, so I have conquered some of that fear. I do know that when you do go out and do something and you do conquer that fear, there's something that comes out in you that really helps you, and it builds each time you do it. So that's what I'm doing with this podcast, with this show, The Real Truth About You. I'm just keeping going, and each show and each time and each fear will build upon itself, and the fears will be conquered, and I'll keep going. I'm going to start doing interviews soon, and I always have this fear that, oh boy, I don't know what I'm going to say. What am I going to ask? I don't really know, but you know what? It's just a conversation. So I'm just going to do it. How about you? What's your fear? Do you have a fear that you need to conquer? Is it, what is it? Is it cooking? Is it anything? What is it? Is it meeting other people? Is it you're not sure what to do with certain things? I've decided that if it's fear that's stopping me, and it makes sense. I mean, it makes sense to continue. I mean, jumping off a cliff is fear for me, and yeah, it doesn't make sense to do that, and in my life anyway, it doesn't make any point. There's no point for doing that, so I'm not going to do that. All right, I'll tell you, I'll be honest right now, jumping off a cliff is not something I'm going to do right now anyway. And so, but what's your fear? Do you have a fear that's stopping you, that's preventing you from moving ahead? And the more you give to that fear, the more you allow it control in your life or energy in your life. Okay, make sure that fear, you've placed it against everything else in your life, right? Some things like you don't want to touch a hot stove. You don't want to touch a burn. That's a different kind of fear. I'm not talking about that kind of fear. And you know the kind of fears we're talking about. The fears that produce positive results, but might be difficult for you to do at the start. So like this show, starting this podcast, me not knowing what to say or what to do, but just getting on and just doing it, That's producing a positive outcome. I've heard people already who are talking about things that I've said and how it may have impacted their life. Well, to me, that's a positive outcome from me overcoming a fear. So what's your fear? What's holding you back? You know, even a writer with a blank page in front of them, you don't realize it, but that's quite a big fear for a writer, right? Not knowing what to write. And I remember reading something about if you're a writer and you're faced with a blank page, just keep typing one word over and over and over again until something flows, and something will flow and something will unlock in your life. So if you've got fears in your life, remember that they can be overcome, and there's ways to overcome them. And we will be talking about that more in depth in future shows and episodes where we will be interviewing other people who've overcome their fear, or we'll have people who will talk about things like that and help you to overcome your fear. And you can also, as we progress through this entire show, as the website develops, as the whole organization and the heart of everything develops, we will eventually have things on our website, therealtruthaboutyou.com, that will address those kind of things about fears that you may have. So I just want to encourage you that if you do have a fear that's keeping you back, then move into that fear. Move into it. You can feel uncomfortable and just be aware of that uncomfortableness, but move through it. Take your time. Don't be hard on yourself. Don't say, well, I got to overcome it right now and it's not working and I tried it. It's not working. Just try it one little thing at a time. For me, I got to be honest, touching fish. I don't know what it is about fish. I love to fish, but I hate to touch fish. But I bought a pair of fish, I don't know what they're called, some kind of rubber fish gloves or something. And you know what? I can touch fish with that, with the glove on. And slowly, bit by bit, I'm touching fish, right? And without the glove on. But I'm telling you, it might sound stupid to you, but it's a fear I've had since I was a kid. And slowly overcoming. So you can start with little things and move into other things and bigger things. And so just start. If you have a fear, pick one. You don't have to pick them all. Just pick one and say, I'm going to start working through that fear until that fear's not there anymore. Because it'll disappear. The more energy you give to fear, the more you allow it a place in your life. So just work through that fear and move forward. Okay, the second thing I want to talk to you about is when I talk to you about this podcast and my fear and things like that, I was actually taking a course on how to identify who your not your customer, but who your audience is, right? Who's your audience, and ask you questions to identify them, and who are they, what age group are they, what color hair does this person have, because they try to get you to identify one person that you're talking to, and then you talk to that person or you address that person because that's your audience. So I'm trying to think of okay, who's my audience? What do they look like? Is it male, female, that kind of thing? And I could not figure it out. But something that Dr. Wayne Dyre said in his book, Wishes Fulfilled, and if you've got an open mind, I would recommend you take a look at that book. Just read it through if you want, or if you do what I did, and buy the audio version of the book. I'm a very audible, visible learner. I'm not so much into reading. I find it difficult. But just that was another thing, overcoming that fear of reading. So I moved through that. But anyway, in his book, he says, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And I'll tell you, I was really ready to fill in it's called an avatar. And when you fill out the profile of your audience, who's that one person that you're speaking to? I had such a difficult time with it. But I was ready and I wanted to know how to do this. And the thing is, I ended up at it was a lobster fest. My wife and I got invited to a steak and lobster fest. It was a fundraiser for the Rotary Club. And Denise Vandenherk, who just happens to be a very good friend of ours, and also the mother-in-law of one of our daughters, and we got talking about this podcast, which at the time we were talking, the podcast hadn't even really been released yet. I was just building episodes and things like that. But we got talking about this, and she's a person I wanted to interview, and you'll probably hear that interview coming up soon. And we just got talking at this Lobster Fest about this whole thing and who's the show for. And as I talked to her and as she reflected things back to me, I started to be able to identify who my audience was, who I'm talking to, who's this show all about, who's it for. And I'll be releasing more of that in another show, another time, another episode. But she really helped me to clarify who my audience is. And it wasn't necessarily something that she said, but it was definite through some affirmations that she gave me from what I said. And the process of speaking to her, out comes this avatar, who's my audience. So anyway, you are my audience, and I'll be writing down who you are, or what your hair color is, or whatever. So anyway, this is really exciting. I'm so happy to be able to talk to you. So work through your fear. That's one of the things we talked about today. And also, when the student is ready, when you're ready to learn, the teachers will appear. Whether you believe in God as the universe, or God as your interpretation of God, or divine influence or divine source in your life, when you're ready, He or the universe or whatever you believe will make it happen. However you believe God to be will make it happen, right? We'll put teachers in your life, so just be open to that. All right, thanks for listening to this show. This has been my longest one yet, 12 minutes, and I'm really excited to be here. If you want to get more information, go to therealtruthaboutyou.com. And my name is Will Sinclair, and thank you so much for listening, and I just can't wait to meet you in another show. If you've got any comments you want to say or any things you want to hear, then just drop me a note. Go to therealtruthaboutyou.com. Send me a note. If you've got the ability to comment on this podcast, then go ahead and comment. Thanks, and be blessed.